I've got a little intro that I'm going to throw out there too. Here we go. Did that play? Did you see the intro? Okay, hi. This is Greg Suddy on Soccer. I am here live with JP Dellacamera, and this is a great day for me because I haven't had the chance to speak with JP personally and talk with him, and he's got such an outstanding career. JP, thanks so much for joining me today.
Greg, my pleasure to join you tonight.
All right, so what I want to do is talk to you a little bit about just how you got going from kind of from the start. I mean, you were born in Massachusetts in the early 50s, and then I don't see you until the 80s with the Major Indoor Soccer League. So how did we get from one to the next?
Wow. Well, that's probably a long story. I'll try to make it shorter. Grew up in Boston, big hockey fan. Back then, the Patriots were not what they are today. Neither were the Celtics, for that matter, or the Red Sox. So the Bruins were selling out every game. Everybody was a hockey fan back then. And my goal was to be an NHL announcer. And you start off in minor league hockey after you go to college. Start off in minor league hockey. You bounce around from one job to another, and then fast forward to the 80s. I had done maybe 10 years of minor league hockey, got tired of riding the buses. NHL was very small. I wasn't getting jobs. And I saw something that really struck me, and that was indoor soccer. I liked outdoor soccer, but when I watched indoor soccer, I thought, this is hockey on grass. This is for me. It combines soccer, which I loved, and hockey, which I loved. And so the team was in Pittsburgh. I was in minor league hockey in Erie, Pennsylvania, 2-hour drive, went there, called a game on tape, submitted it. And long story short, they hired me, and I spent 4 years with the Pittsburgh Spirit, then moved on to the St. Louis Steamers. And the league deal with the MISL actually started in Pittsburgh because I was the Steamers backup announcer, and Bud Sports had the rights to the games. And I became the backup to Bob Carpenter, who was a very, very famous soccer broadcaster then. Now he does baseball. He's done basketball. Terrific guy, terrific broadcaster. When Bob left his position with Anheuser-Busch, I became their number one guy. And then 1986, they had the rights to the World Cup, and that's where the outdoor stuff really started.
Well, I mean, the first time I saw you, you were broadcasting alongside, I believe it was Kyle Rote Jr.
Oh, boy.
Didn't you do?
No,
I believe I saw you.
Yeah, that was before me. I think my first partner, well, in Pittsburgh, it was Bruno Schwartz, who used to be a coach at the scholastic level. That was my first broadcast partner in Pittsburgh. For the MISL, it was probably Ty Keogh, actually, as my Ty Keogh or Seamus Mellon was my first.
I was just going to say one of the viewers is saying Seamus Mellon. For those of you that are watching right now, I just want to throw this out there. I have let me show you what I'm seeing right now on the screen. I can put this comment up, and it says Facebook user. I just ran a test, and in order for you guys to make your comments to where your name is actually put up there with your comments, you need to be watching on Study on Soccer on Facebook or Study on Soccer on YouTube. This is a triple simulcast, and the MASL off the wall format doesn't give us me the opportunity to put your guys' names up there. So if you want to make comments, I can put them up on the screen, and you get your name up there if you're watching it on either Study on Soccer Facebook or Study on Soccer on YouTube. Yeah. So and the MISL was just what those were. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love this sport and I've loved it all my life. But man, those were some magical years, weren't they?
They were fantastic years, and when you think of the players that they had,
The
I wrote these down so I wouldn't forget anyone, and I'm sure that people that are watching this have their own names, but off the top of my head, Jungle, Terlecki, Julie V, Tattoo, Segoda, Preki, Victor Noguera, Kim Rundved, Kevin Crow, Zoran Karic, Hector Marinaro, and there's dozens more like that. We had the best players coming over here to this country. Like today, if you fast forward to today, every one of those names that I just mentioned would be playing outdoor soccer in MLS. The money is better there, right? But we didn't have MLS back then. We didn't have anything back then. And the NASL was struggling and eventually went out of business. So we had the best players that wanted to play in this country playing indoor soccer. And I just remember as a broadcaster, anytime a Jungle touched the ball or a Terlecki or a Tattoo, you knew something magical could happen. Didn't matter what the score was. You always knew when they had the ball at their feet, there was going to be a moment of brilliance. And as a broadcaster, I mean, that made every game exciting. Even when Pittsburgh was not a playoff team when I was there, every game, as long as you had Terlecki, every game meant something.
Did you stay with the MISL until it folded, or did it interrupt? Were you moving into the outdoor broadcast at that time?
It's a great point. I think I was out before it folded. I want to say, I think my last year was 1990, maybe. Pretty sure, but it was on its way out, I would say. I can't remember. Somebody else that's watching this might remember. I don't remember when my last indoor game was. So I have no recollection. Too many games in my head. I have no recollection of when I stopped doing indoor, but I will tell you, Greg, that I've always missed it. I loved calling those games. So much fun for me. Some of the best years of my life were in the old MISL. It's where I cut my teeth. It's where I learned more about the game. I talked to referees all the time. I mean, players, coaches, referees were so accessible to you. You could walk into the locker room at any time. When the game was over, especially when the games are on TV, referees would always come up to me and say, how did that look on TV? Because there's no VAR then. There's no nothing, right? So you've got a situation where, referees were looking for that feedback too. They knew it was a controversial call and they would say to me, how did it look? And at the end I would say either, you nailed it or didn't look like it to me or too close to tell.
Right. Well, and you mentioned the accessibility. I think that's the one thing that really turned me on as a fan back when I was in my early 20s. And the accessibility to the players. And it was that way. I mean, and it wasn't just the players. I mean, it was the owners, it was the broadcasters, it was everybody. It was almost like a little family, and there was no pretentious behavior. I mean, everybody had egos. I get that. But those egos were kind of kept in the locker room and on the field, and not taken out onto the to the fans, and everybody could get access to the players, and that was a pretty outstanding period of time. And the thing is, I'm gonna fast forward a little bit because that culture has never changed. That's one of the things that still exists today. With arena soccer, the MASL is all of that approachability to the fans. Some of the greatest things is watching the interaction with the kids, and it really is a great culture.
Greg, if you asked anyone that's objective in the media who the most personable, the friendliest athletes are, soccer and hockey are number 1 and 2, depending on who you talk to. And then the rest of it, everybody has a different opinion, whether it's football, basketball, or baseball. But of the major sports, it's soccer and hockey. And it's always been like that for whatever reason. And, as I'm seeing the bottom of your video here, and it says from Eric Bergred, JP did the 1991 All-Star Game in Kansas City on Sports Channel America. And I would say this, Eric, you have a better memory than I do. I know I did Sports Channel America games But if you say I did that game, I did that game. Thank you, Eric.
Okay. And yeah, exactly. I would have to agree with that statement.
He's
If
probably
Eric's
right.
memory
No, he's
declares
probably
that
right.
that's what's going on, absolutely.
Yeah. In my
Absolutely.
dealings with
All right. So
Eric, he's got a fantastic memory, I would say.
yeah, in fact, I'm hoping to have him on Saturday. I'm hoping to have Eric on this show on Saturday. Sort of a spoiler alert, everybody. Eric is going to be hopefully is going to be my guest on Saturday. So yeah, very good. Thanks, Eric, for that. Yeah, so the MISL. Now you actually stayed in hockey later on too, did you not? I mean, you actually broadcast for the NHL eventually, did you not?
I did. And the ironic part about that, Greg, is that I always wanted to be an NHL broadcaster. And it's not that I gave up on that dream, but indoor soccer was going really well. And I was doing college basketball at the time. A minor league hockey deal came up with the Chicago Wolves, who ran that franchise like an NHL team, by the way. And I was on in the Chicago market. I was there for, I want to say, a couple of years. Really enjoyed it. Did some work at ESPN with hockey, playoff hockey, and then got a call from a friend of mine in Atlanta asking me if I could fill in on some Atlanta Thrashers games. And I said, sure. So I did like 5 games. And then a couple of years later, the job opened and I ended up getting it. And my message to the younger people who always ask about, broadcasting and a career is you don't have to give up your dream. Sometimes the dream happens when you stop chasing it. Like I spent years trying to get into the NHL and could never crack it. And then when I wasn't looking, it kind of fell in my lap. So if you have that dream as a broadcaster, be realistic, chase it as best you can, as hard as you can. But if you don't get it right away, have a little patience. It doesn't mean it won't happen. It may just happen later than you think and in a different way than you might have thought.
Yeah, no kidding, huh? Sometimes our plans aren't exactly how things turn out, but yeah, chase your dream. I would agree. When did you start moving into the outdoor game? This is sort of a loaded question because with the United States men's national team, your involvement with the United States women's national team, and you've been doing that for I'm gonna say what, 3 decades?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, 80s. I started doing men's, women early 90s, I would say.
Yeah. So I asked Michael Lewis a few months back. I asked Michael Lewis. I said, in your opinion, Michael, what is the most significant moment in American men's national team history? If I were to ask you that question, and by the way, I know this, the answer he gave me, you were calling the game. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. I know the game.
Okay.
At least.
Okay.
I'd be stunned if it's a different one from him. 1989 game in Trinidad, World Cup qualifier, Paul Caligiuri's goal. That set the stage for everything good that's happened for U.S. soccer since. Without that goal, without that victory, who knows? But that set the stage for everything. So at the time, we referred to it as the shot heard around the world. Later, I in interviews, I called it the $1 billion goal because I think that if you added up all of the money
there you go.
generated since then, and that means, sponsors, it means starting MLS, it means new stadiums, player contracts, television rights, and merchandise. It's in the billions what that did. And that was the start of it.
Yeah, and that is the answer that he gave, of course. Yeah, I guess that's the standard moment of when modern American international national team soccer really did, get the shot in the arm, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, Greg, it's not even my opinion or Michael's opinion. I think it's more factual. That was the game, right? Because hadn't qualified
Yep.
for a World Cup in 40 years, right? I mean, you think about that now.
Right.
Imagine going 40 years now without a World Cup. Like, that's unheard of. People were going crazy here when we didn't qualify in 2018, right? And
Exactly.
this was like 40 years without a World Cup. So it was huge. And when they write history books on soccer, that's the one that really got things going here on the men's side. And if you wanted to go on the women's side, 1999 Women's World Cup was the one. Some might say the Olympics in 96, but the Olympics didn't get the coverage that the World Cup got
Right.
in 1999. So I would go with 99 for that.
Um, then talk to let's see. Could you give a similar answer to your experience in Major League Soccer? Is there
Um,
like a single moment that stands out?
Oh, wow. Major League Soccer is interesting because now it's almost 30 years old. I mean, it started in
Yeah,
1996. They have come such a long, long way. I think
indeed.
that when you write the history book on Major League Soccer, there are a lot of big moments. When they contracted teams, when they took out Miami at the time and Tampa Bay, at that time to become a stronger league. When you think about Beckham's arrival, and now fast forward to Messi, and in between that, all of the new stadiums that have been built and the new training facilities, the money that has been spent, I think it's a fantastic league, and it can only grow and grow more. Doing what they're doing with Mexico now with the League's Cup.
Indeed.
Champions League, Champions Cup, all of that stuff. I think it's great for MLS, but it all started, with spending more money and building their own stadiums. That's really when it started to get serious. And now when you look at these stadiums, every one of them is built better than the one previous. And the training
Right.
facilities, I've been to a few of them and they're state of the art, just like they are in Europe. And if you want players to come here, obviously the money talks, right? I mean, they're not coming here. Messi came for the money, let's be honest. I mean, money talks, but if the money is equal, a player wants to know uh, where's the city I'm living in, right? Where's the stadium I'm playing in? And where am I training every day? And in MLS, those are now advantages, whereas in the 90s and early 2000s, they were really disadvantages because we didn't have any of that infrastructure in place.
There have been a number of players that have come through the MASL with Major League Soccer experience. I think the first person that most people would mention would be, of course, Landon Donovan, Jermaine Jones at the same period of time. But that's not it. I mean, there have been some good players that have come through, and a few with maybe a single season in the MLS, not actually long careers like those two guys had, but that have come through with MLS experience in the major arena soccer league. I think, and I think I'm going to be right with this. It may be a bit of a senior moment, but in order to tie in a little something as far as bringing in a personality, if my memory serves me right, I believe that Ron Newman was the first coach hired when Major League Soccer started for the Kansas City Wizards.
I think he was not positive, but I think he was.
And I mean, as a fan coming from San Diego here, hearing that news, I mean, my heart skipped a beat. It's like, are you kidding me? We get to see Ron Newman because, of course, I started following the Sockers when they were in the NASL playing outdoors, and so for me, it was almost going full circle to see Ron Newman pitching his wares again on the outdoor pitch. And so it was pretty.
Ron was great. He wasn't as successful outdoors. It's a different game, but I think he was ahead of most, with the indoor game. But I also think that, what Ron didn't get enough credit for, the managing of egos.
Absolutely.
An incredible job, because when you think of that San Diego team, even though we had a salary cap, and many of us were scratching our heads thinking, how are they still that good? Like, how do they keep this guy? How do they keep that guy? There were egos there, and even guys that didn't get to play as much were probably starters on other teams, right? But they wanted to play for San
Yeah.
Diego. And Ron got the best out of all of them, and they won all of those titles. And they did it in style. They did it in an entertaining way. I love my dealings with him. He was great with media. He would always give us a good quote, a good laugh.
Absolutely.
Remember what he said about the San Diego Union? He used to call it the San Diego Onion, and somebody asked him why, and he said, because every time he reads that paper, it makes him cry. And he was talking about the lack of soccer coverage. They were winning all these titles, and he didn't think they were getting enough coverage. And he was just so good with a quip and so successful. It's a shame, he's no longer with us. But
Yeah.
great man. Loved my dealings with him.
Yeah. I mean, what a quick wit. And I mean, I have a few stories that I mean, I only met him a couple of times, but yeah, I wanted to make that connection to Major League Soccer because I think, obviously the Major Arena Soccer League has endowed the honor of putting his name on the championship trophy in the tournament.
Yeah.
And having just a little bit of knowledge, of him being that early involved in Major League Soccer when it first started outdoors. And it's interesting you mentioned the egos. As most people know, one of my closest friends today is Julie V, and Julie has a bit of he's got a little bit of an ego, and
yeah, but he backed it up. But he backed it up. I mean, they all backed it up. They were cocky. They had egos. They were cocky, but they were good. They were damn good. So if you can back it up, nothing wrong with it. You know what I mean? If you're like just a trash talker and you can't back it up, you have no credibility. But those guys, every night, it was hard to beat them, especially, in San Diego. We'd have teams coming in from wherever, Pittsburgh, Minnesota, Chicago, and they'd see the great weather there. And they would put us up at a hotel like by the water. And it's like you felt like you're on vacation. And then you'd go out and play the game, and you'd get trounced on the field. Wouldn't even be close,
Yeah, well,
it was that good.
And Julie was also good for a couple of good quotes now and then. And it was really interesting to tie in what you were talking about, Ron Newman, management of egos. And that's a key statement right there, because that at the time, as a professional manager, as a professional coach of professional men in every sport, that's what you really have to be doing is managing egos. He was quoted in the San Diego Onion one time as mentioning something about Julie V. He said Ron Newman did. He says Julie V can do anything with his feet except for keep him out of his mouth.
I remember that. I remember that quote. I do. I mean, I think Ron had the biggest collection of egos that I've probably ever experienced on any team in any sport. Biggest collection. But they were all good. They were all good,
Yeah.
I mean, some of them ended up on our national team for the
Absolutely.
men, right? Outdoors, Crow, Clavijo, Hugo Perez. I mean, they had some great players, but part of their greatness was they knew that they were good and they were that confident, and they probably brought some fear into other teams, thinking, well, gee, if I stop this guy, I still got to deal with this guy. If I stop this guy, still got to deal with this guy, and I'm not even mentioning, like the Paul Wrights and the Paul Dohertys and, so many others, Wad Hermes. I mean, there's so many great names from the past, too numerous to really mention. And I'll feel bad if I've slighted anyone, but I mean, those were great teams to watch.
So, JP, let me ask you something, and this has come up in conversation many times in my circles, mostly because people know, that I've been following the San Diego Sockers for so many years, and and I'm also somewhat objective. I mean, I try to think that I'm objective. I'm not that guy that yells and screams when the red card comes out if the red card was deserved, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and the question is has been, did the fact that the San Diego Sockers won 10 national championships in 11 seasons, and did that lend to the demise of the league? Because, you know, the argument being nobody else has a chance to win.
No, I don't think that was ever a factor in it. I think that every year the salary cap went down, you know, and I think that teams just got tired of losing money the way they were. I think that the model didn't make sense, and maybe back then, maybe an MLS model would have worked, you know, where you had single entity. I'm not sure, but I mean, back then I remember. I mean, it was tough for San Diego because these guys were all playing great soccer, and they'd have to get pay cuts because
Right.
MISL reduced the salary cap. And I think
Right.
that they just, at the end of the day, you know, they had others like the DeBartolo Corporation owned the Penguins. They had other owners that owned other interests. And I think it just got to a point where the economics just didn't work for them. And I think that was it. I don't think it was, you know, the San Diego dominance. I don't think that was it. I think dynasties are great for sports. You know, I love the Chicago Bulls dynasty, New England Patriots dynasty. There's something to be said about teams that do it that way. And the Sockers were definitely one of them. I think that people admired them, respected them, disliked them, hated them, you know, depending on their perspective, right? Especially teams that always lost to them. But I think it was always that respect there for them. And it's just my opinion. I think that the success of the Sockers had nothing to do with the league, you know, folding. Blame that on economics, ownership, other things that maybe were going on at that time. I mean, the product itself was great, but I think at the end of the day, you know, if you keep cutting salary, I mean, the players are the show, right? I mean, if you keep cutting them and it's not even worth it now for them to play, now you're not getting the best players. And that's what made us a great league. You know, when you had the Jungles, the Terleckis, the Tattoos, Segodas, V's, all those guys were playing and enjoying themselves. And they were playing at the highest level of soccer in our country, and it was indoors.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. So let me move. I mean, there's so much we could talk about to move back into your broadcasting career. And of course, that's how we all know you and respect you so much and see you. I mean, you're in my living room many times every year. You're right there in my living room, either broadcasting the men's team or broadcasting the women's team. We saw you recently down in Australia and New Zealand. That was an outstanding tournament. I guess they had some great results in the stands. The turnout was really good, I guess, in ticket sales and whatnot. I mean, it wasn't exactly what everybody was hoping for here in the United States, but there, you know, and I think the common statement has been that the world has caught up with the United States. Now, that being said, which I find kind of interesting, because that being said, this isn't the first time that the women didn't make it to the championship and win. You know, so I mean, you know, it's not like they've never lost before. No, they didn't go as far as they have.
Yeah, it's the way they lost and how they lost that has people upset. I would say this might have been competitively speaking, storyline speaking, this might have been the best World Cup, you know, certainly in recent memory, right? Because you had so many great storylines, not just the US with their early exit, but you know, Germany was out early, Brazil was out early, Canada was out early, Colombia advanced, you know, the host nation Australia almost got to the final. You know, you had Spain winning it for the first time. I mean, there were so many great stories in there during that Women's World Cup. They had 75,000 people at 5 different games in Sydney. New Zealand didn't draw as well, except when New Zealand played, or if the U.S. played somebody popular, then it drew in New Zealand. But the tournament itself was great. Both host countries were great. I think that the only thing that's disappointing, besides that early exit, I felt sorry for fans in the U.S. because the time slots were ridiculous. Even more
Yes, they were.
ridiculous where you are, right? Because, if the game
Yeah.
aired at 6 a.m. on the East, that's 3 a.m. on the West Coast.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that hurt ratings, for sure. But, I think before, Greg, people would say the rest of the world is catching up. And people thought that was a cliche. And I think this
Right.
World Cup proved that it was not a cliche, that it is, in fact, true. It's not just an opinion. They're catching up. And, we heard from the Dutch coach said to us at one point, he said, Americans used to be bigger, stronger, and faster than the rest of us. And he
Mm.
said, not anymore. And he
No.
also said, people used to fear the U.S. because of
Right.
those advantages. And now
Right.
they don't. So you take away the
Right.
fear factor and you take away
Right.
the physical superiority. And now it's about playing the game. And some of
Nice.
these countries, like Spain, can really
Right.
play the game, right?
Yep.
So we lost this Women's World Cup, in my opinion, early, like in the round of 16, right? But we only scored 4 goals total in those
Yes.
games, right?
Yes.
No one played well. I think
Right.
Naomi Girma looked good, but
Right.
nobody really outside of her, you would say, played at their level or certainly beyond their level, right? We didn't use our bench. We bragged about our
Right.
bench, didn't really use the bench,
Right.
and nobody stepped up, and we were not diversified as a team. We were so predictable in everything that we
Mm.
did. Didn't want to change formation, didn't want to change tactics. And so there are a lot of reasons why we lost. And some people will blame it on, VAR, right? Because on that penalty kick, the entire ball barely got over the line, right? They said it was by a millimeter.
Yeah,
But
that's what I read. Yeah.
we weren't that close. I mean, I say we as a country. I mean, the game against Vietnam probably told us a lot in that I was hoping it wasn't going to be like a Thailand game where it was 13-0, but I thought, realistically, it's probably going to be 5 or 6. And when it was
Right.
only 2, you had
Right.
a bad feeling, right? I
Right.
always
Right.
knew that the Netherlands game was the key game because we knew that they would win over Vietnam. So now you play the Dutch. And if
Right.
you lose that game, you're going to finish in second place. If you get a draw, you'll probably also finish in second place. And the Netherlands were a better team than the U.S. on that day, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
so the Portugal game was scary. We as a country, again, we should have lost. Portugal was better.
Yeah.
And the shot that went off the crossbar,
Yeah.
as it left her foot, I'm watching Alyssa Nair dive, and this is all happening like so quickly, and I'm thinking, this is a goal. Like in my head, I'm thinking, and it went
Yeah.
off the post. And then
Yeah.
Portugal had another opportunity later. So, the U.S. just never played well. They've got terrific players, a good balance, I thought, some veterans, some young players, but at the end of the day, sometimes it's just not your tournament. You just don't play well. And that's it. Like nobody is saying 5 guys played really well. Nobody's saying that at all. Like
Right.
that's
Right.
not what you're hearing, right? I mean,
That's right.
Germany's out too. Brazil was out. In the group stage, they were out.
Exactly.
That's amazing, when you think about that. And that Colombia advanced, that Jamaica advanced. So it is a fact that the world is catching up. But, next year for the Olympics, we get Kat Macario back. We get Mallory Swanson back. And those are 2 players that really could have helped us. When you look at our team, Megan Rapinoe's had an injury-plagued year. Rose LaBelle hadn't even played in an NWSL game, for months. And then she, you know what I mean? So, like, we had some players that were physically not at their best. Some players just didn't play well. and that's the way it goes sometimes. But I still think, we'll be one of those teams favored to win the Olympics, and we've got 4 years to go before the next Women's World Cup. So I'm not a doom and gloom guy. I still think, we'll rebound and we'll be very good. This was a hard lesson, but I also think it was a much needed lesson. Spain, I know I'm rambling a bit here, but Spain won the under 17 and the under 20 World Cup, and now they win the senior World Cup. And some of those players obviously went from 17 to 20 to senior, right? We haven't done anything at the under 17 or under 20 level in a long time. So if we are going to rebuild or retool or remodel or whatever the word is, that you want to use, I think it has to start with the younger players, the under 16s, the under 17s, the under 19s, whatever categories they are. We need to have success at those levels to develop players for our full senior national team, and we'll do that. I'm sure we will.
So I want to rewind a little bit, and then also hit the men's national team conversation a little bit also. But when we were talking about MLS, I had a thought. I mean, which player, international player, affected Major League Soccer greater? Was it David Beckham when he came, or is it Messi now?
It's a trick question. David Beckham, because of where MLS was at that time, right? Lionel Messi is setting all kinds of records here, right? But MLS is at a good place. When Lionel Messi got here, they're almost at 30 teams, right? They had a television deal with Apple that got them whatever it was, $1 billion. They have teams that want to come in, expansion teams that want to come in. Major League Soccer is in a great place. Sorry, folks, they didn't need Messi. Great to have him, but they didn't need him, right?
Right.
MLS needed Beckham because they weren't getting the international stars. Somebody had to be the first one. Beckham was the guy, right?
So he was kind of like the Pele.
Without a doubt.
He was good.
Without a doubt. He didn't have Pele's skill, but he had the brand, right? And people that didn't even like soccer knew who he was. And if you remember back then, look at how many teams MLS had then. Look how many teams had their own stadiums back then. Look at the expansion interest back then, and it quadrupled 5 times, 10 times, 15 times once Beckham came here. And then who else came after him? Thierry Henry came. Robbie Keane came. There were so many other names that came. Somebody had to be first, and that was Beckham. Messi's going to set all kinds of records here, and I'm not minimizing it because what he's done here is amazing. Messi, right?
Yeah, it is.
He scored in every game but last night. They've been winning, right? They're selling out. People are making huge profits on scalping the tickets, right?
True that.
Everything he's done has been magnificent. But what I'm saying to you is that MLS is in a much different place today than they were when Beckham came. And it's my opinion that Beckham did more for them at a time when they needed it than now. What Messi's doing now is incredible, and he'll continue to do it. But MLS was in a good place, right? If Messi didn't come along, what was going to happen to the league? Was the league in trouble? No, it's a top 10 league in the world. So without him, it was a top 10 league in the world, right? So
right.
But I'm glad he came. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's been fun. And he's had a huge effect because a lot of people are paying attention to Inter Miami. And I went to MLS game about a little over a week ago up in Los Angeles, and watched LAFC. And everybody, the buzz, even though the Colorado Rapids were in town, the buzz was that this weekend Inter Miami is going to be in town and Messi's going to be in town, and everybody was that's the buzz.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody wanted,
what's ironic, Greg, is that Messi's boss is Beckham. Like,
I know, right? I know. Isn't
that's
that fun?
Beckham's team. And I'm not comparing Beckham to Messi in terms of skill level, because to me, it's either Messi or Ronaldo. I'm a Messi guy. To me, he's the greatest player, in the world, Messi.
Right.
But a far greater player than Beckham, far greater. But Beckham was a
Right. Right.
brand, and Beckham spoke English.
Yes.
He's on all these commercials. Beckham, he was on various talk shows in the U.S., right? And that was an advantage that he has over Messi, who, to the best of my knowledge, does not speak English or is not comfortable, speaking English. So they can't use him
Right.
on the English side as much as they could say Beckham.
Right. Yeah. Now, really quickly, the men's national team. I wanted to talk a little bit. You mentioned something that I saw, kind of a parallel in Qatar to what happened in Australia and New Zealand, and that is that a lot of in Qatar during the Men's World Cup, a lot of the big name teams exited early, and it turned out to be a really exciting tournament overall. And I had some issues. I mean, I had some issues. I think a lot of people had issues with the fact that it was being played in Qatar. I didn't think that they deserved to host a World Cup, but that goes aside from that goes aside from the conversation of what happened on the field, because what happened on the field was an outstanding World Cup, one of the best.
Yeah, no, it was. And, when you saw what looked like it was not going to be a great final, right? Turned into a fantastic final that people will be talking about, for decades, right? But I did the game where Saudi Arabia beat Argentina, like
Right. I
that
know.
was
Right.
like amazing. Yeah, that was amazing, Um,
Yeah.
there were teams, the African teams went farther than everyone thought, Croatia had a good run. There were so many great stories at that World Cup in Qatar. And, the US, depending on the draw, right? I mean, I knew they'd get out of their group, but then I thought, well, who's the matchup going to be? And so when I hear people criticize, we lost to the Netherlands, I think the Netherlands at that point were unbeaten in 16 or 17 or whatever it was. I never expected us to beat the Dutch. Never did. So I thought they were a success, this US team, because my expectation was that they would get out of the group, and depending on who they would meet, then we see, right? But when I knew it was the Netherlands, I was not expecting. Right. That's just me. I wasn't expecting it.
So obviously, I mean, talking about the World Cup, the next World Cup is going to be here in the United States, Mexico, and Canada. So it's kind of it's kind of that's not quite the 11th hour, but it's pretty close to the 11th hour as far as the United States national team putting together a side that is going to challenge seriously for the World Cup. I remember back when the World Cup was here last time, although the United States was taken out relatively early by Brazil, I found it rather, I don't know, sort of a comfort that they lost to who was the eventual champions. I mean, you just happened to run into the eventual champions early in the tournament, and so you were eliminated. Right. So that was, and so it's comforting I mean, it's exciting to see that the World Cup's coming to the United States. I think the United States has a challenge in front of them to get it done and to really put that team together for that event.
Yeah. And I think one of the hardest things, I don't hear many people talking about it now, but I think they will be, is that, you're letting the US, Mexico, and Canada in, right, as co-hosts of this tournament. And I think that's a bit of a negative, because you don't have to deal with World Cup qualifying. So all you're playing are pretty much glorified friendlies. So I think that's tough. They've got to come up with something like, that's why they're playing in Copa America. They might have to create their own competitions, because you only get better by the competition that you're playing against, right? So, and everyone says that CONCACAF's not strong, but I debate that. I mean, if you've never been to Guatemala, Panama, El Salvador, Honduras, if you think it's easy to play there, I would say you're mistaken. It's not easy to play there. You know, there's
Right.
other places around the world that might be tougher to play in. Azteca, it's not easy. You know, not easy to go in there. Even if the Mexican team is not that good, and they haven't been like at the last World Cup, certainly, it's still tough, you know, to win there. So I think that if I'm looking at this U.S. team, I think we've got the most talented young players that I've ever seen, like ever,
Wow.
you know, as a
Wow.
group, as a collection, you know, whoever you want to name, whether it's Tyler Adams, McKinney, Pulisic, Reyna, you know, the list goes on and on. There's so many great young players that have probably 3 or 4 World Cups in them. So I
Right.
don't know how far we'll get in this
Mm-hmm.
one. No idea. But I think that as America, where we are now as a soccer nation, getting out of the group stage should be a minimum. That should be the minimum, right? And I think you should always try to be one step ahead of the next one. So like we lost what in the round of 16 the last time. So let's get to the quarters, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Before you can say, yeah, we can win it. Why would you say we can win it if we haven't gotten to the quarters, you know? Like
Right.
baby steps, right? 2026 home field advantage if you want. Mexico and Canada can say the same, but the chances of either of those 3 countries winning a World Cup are not that great in 2026 as we do this podcast right now. Certainly there's 5 or 6 other countries that you would say have a much better shot today.
Right. That's right. I just want to point out in the comments down here, Philly, Christian Philemon, play-by-play announcer for the Empire Strikers. He is a Los Angeles FC fan and fanatic, and also podcaster and broadcaster for them. And he was my host, in fact, last week when I went up to the game with LAFC. And Messi isn't going to be happy when he leaves Los Angeles this weekend.
I see that. So I guess that means he's playing LAFC, right? This weekend?
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is Messi
okay,
playing though? Is Messi playing, or is he on international duty then? I don't know when he goes.
I don't either, but my understanding in talking with Philly was that, and maybe Philly can let us know here in the comments, but my understanding was that he will be on the field in Los Angeles.
Okay, I have no idea. I wasn't following that. I just knew that he was going to miss some games because of, if you can believe it, they're already starting qualifiers, right, in South America.
Right.
That's like the longest World Cup qualifying process anywhere.
So Christian is confirming it.
Good. Great.
So
great.
Okay.
So great.
Yeah. So let's jump into the Major Arena Soccer League. I told you in advance that we were going to I was going to ask you a couple of questions. I am not that guy that puts a man on the, puts his feet to the fire or anything like that. So it's all about just some friendly conversations and information, whatever it is you can share from the standpoint of the Major Arena Soccer League. I think there are 2 primary questions. One sort of got an A and a B to it, but and that first one is we have any new ideas coming forward as far as Major Arena Soccer League broadcast? Are we Twitch going forward still, or is there any other discussions outside of that?
The Twitch deal was for last season. We put it together. We were happy with it, but everything is up for like discussion. There were no long-term deals, I would say. So that's still something that's to be talked about. I think if we do stay on Twitch, we would like to monetize it maybe a little bit better, maybe promote ourselves a little bit better on it. We like the interaction part with our fans where they can make comments, and some of them do take the comments too far, and then they have to be blocked out, I guess. But that happens. Yeah, that happens. But we like the format, but that doesn't mean we're there this year or forever. I think I'm still trying to get caught up, Greg, to be honest, with being away in Australia, New Zealand for 6 weeks. But I do know that we don't have anything in place currently that we could announce.
So my defense of Twitch. Now I was kind of a skeptic when it was first announced because I'm not a gamer, so I'm not really familiar with that format, that channel. But as it turned out through the course of the season, the thing that I discovered, and see, one of the things that I have the biggest problem with doing what I do is successfully reaching out to people that don't already know the game of indoor soccer. The majority, if not 100%, I mean, the vast majority of the people that see me or hear me talk or have anything to do with me are already fans of the game. So it's difficult to reach those people that are sports fans, would love this sport, but don't know anything about it, don't know it exists, whatever or are purists of the outdoor game and look down their nose at the indoor sport or something of that nature. But what Twitch did is it, especially on a couple of broadcasts in particular, I mean, it just went off the charts with bringing in people that followed the game, and you can see it in the comments. They were asking questions.
Right.
What's this sport? Or what is this thing? Who are these people? What are the rules? And I thought that was very exciting from the standpoint of the Twitch format.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the A part of the question. The B part of the question, and I sort of threw this at you earlier, was and the fans have sort of nailed me on this one, so I got to throw it out there. Was why does the major sport networks, let's just throw ESPN out there, and we know, of course, ESPN knows that the Major Arena Soccer League exists. We know they know that the league is there, but they don't give game results. They don't give a nod to it. Every once in a while, you'll see a highlight from the week's top 10 or something like that.
Right.
But that's as far as it goes, and yet they'll broadcast cornhole. So I mean, how come that's happening? This is really a question not from me, but from the fans.
Yeah, I wish I could figure out cornhole or what's the other one? Pickleball? Is that what
pickleball?
It is? Right? Like I have no idea about these sports, but but they get on, right? So like if Tom Brady invests in pickleball, that becomes like a big thing, right? Or some other celebrity invests, it becomes a big thing.
There's that.
Right? I think that is it like the chicken and the egg, like I think if we were drawing more fans in our stadium, right?
Right.
Or had some name players that people knew, that would get one of these other streaming partners to think about us, right? I don't think we're that far off in terms of getting some interest, but I think we need to make our product better. I think our product in the field is great. I think we need to spend more money on our streams, make the games better so that when we would show it to somebody, whether it was a CBS, a Paramount, a Peacock, ESPN Plus, whatever that is, to be able to show them our game. I think we would have a better shot at it, because if they look at one of our games and they see there's 2,000 people there in a 8,000 seat building, it's not what they want. You know what I mean?
Nope.
And I don't know what pickleball draws or what cornhole draws, or I don't know what the money is, in those areas. Right. But I think that I'll give you these two thoughts here. I think our league could use two things that would really get us going in the right direction. One of those is a big time, with no disrespect to our owners, but a big time owner from NHL, NBA, NFL, somebody that when you hear the name, you would say, wow, Arthur Blank is buying an indoor team.
Wow.
Robert Kraft is buying an indoor team.
Wow.
The Hunt family is buying an indoor team. I think if you have that, not only if you have that, it's credibility, but now as soon as one NHL owner says, I'm going to buy a franchise, he's not going to be alone, because these guys follow. You know what I mean? If Mark Cuban today, Mark Cuban's a trendsetter. If he said today he's buying Dallas Sidekicks, he's buying the Texas Outlaws, he's buying the San Diego Sockers, whatever Mark Cuban's buying, that draws attention, right? Again, no disrespect to our owners. We do not have a Mark Cuban, right?
Right.
We don't. We're not supposed to, right? I mean, we're not a top 4 league, right? So I think that's one of the things that we could use would be an owner with cachet, with clout, that people would say, wow, he's investing. And it doesn't even have to be a big time owner. It could be a celebrity. It could be like a Tom Brady, somebody, somebody from another sport. We're seeing guys like JJ Watt just bought a stake in a club in England, and other players have done the same. They're being part of investment groups in England, in the US, in the NWSL. I think if we can get one of those people to come in with us, that would be something that would really help us. And the second thing I would say would be one or two Landon Donovan type names that they're not going to play anymore in MLS, but they could still play in our league. And somebody would say, I know him. He played 10 years in Chicago, or he played 10 years in San Jose, or, he played somewhere else, Los Angeles with the Galaxy for 10 years. One of those names, it's unfortunate we only had Landon and Jermaine for a short period of time. And it's unfortunate we had them before Shep, Keith, and I came into this league, because I think with our connections, we could have got a little bit more bang for the buck. I think, and I think then maybe you could have gone to a ESPN Plus or Paramount Plus and said, hey, listen, just take the Donovan games. He's going to play in these 5 or 6 games. Maybe we could get something done, but it's baby steps, we took over 2 years ago. This is our 3rd year. And I think we've improved on a lot of things. There's still a long way to go. But our goal when we started was to make everything better by 25, 30% or more. And by that, we meant everything, the website, social media, streaming, whatever that is. And in some cases, we exceeded those numbers. I will say this, though. The caliber of play on the field is way better than what I would have anticipated before I came in. I had no idea, because I didn't know the names of the players. And so I had no idea how good the level was. Our product is great. And I think that when the stars align, I think we can sell this game. I think, we can get on a Paramount Plus or a ESPN Plus or Peacock. I think we can. Maybe not today, but I think when the stars align, because the game itself is fantastic. It can be played in a 2-hour window. It moves. It's exciting. It's got all the excitement of hockey without the fights, which I think are crazy. I always thought that.
Agreed.
It's got all the excitement of hockey. It's got high scoring. It's got the beauty of outdoor soccer, but without the things that people don't like. People don't like outdoor soccer because not enough goals in it. It's players are diving. It moves too slow compared to the indoor game. We've got the best of both worlds, with the indoor game. So I think it's a saleable project. I think we need to get more fans in the seats, promote our rivalries, come up with that 1 or 2 owners or ownership groups that will bring more bigger people into the league, more eyeballs into the league, maybe television into the league. And then on the player side, even though I think our product is great, if we could latch on to a guy that this year is saying, it's my last year in MLS, but he's 34, 35, he still wants to play, come on down.
One of the things that you mentioned, you've said a couple of times, you said baby steps, and clearly, I mean, I see that, and I see the need for it to be played out that way. I personally have the patience to continue to move forward, with baby steps, and believe that that's the smart way to go. I think that there's a lot of fans that don't have that patience. I think there's a lot of fans that want this thing to be pushed and marketed hardcore right now, and get frustrated along the way. And to be fair, I'm one that would have that argument, because it's a little bit disappointing from my standpoint, because It's and other older fans like myself, because I've followed this sport for so dang long, and it's frustrating that at 45 years old as a sport in America, in the United States, we're still taking baby steps, you know,
Yeah.
and it's a little bit frustrating. Um, all right, so JP, so this was the other question I was going to throw your way that is being asked, and that is, do we get to see you do a play-by-play this season? Maybe a game of the week, or the opening game of the season, or one of the championship games, or somewhere along the way? Do we get to see you calling a game for
Wow.
us?
I've always thought, Greg, that I don't know when I'm going to stop doing this. It's something that I love and I want to continue to do. But I know the end is closer, certainly than the beginning was. So I don't know, how long I'm going to do this. But I always thought, wouldn't I love to go back and do an indoor game at some point? Like kind of where it all began. And so that's still in my head. But I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means I would try to do one game somewhere. I mean, there's no way I would do like a package. Like if we signed a deal with somebody, with my title with the league, I wouldn't do it. You know what I mean? I would have to
Sure.
either drop my title and maybe be a league consultant, because the optics are not good if the president of communications and media is the play-by-play voice. You know what I mean? You wouldn't see that in any other league. So
Right.
I would certainly entertain the thought. Um, I might do something if it involved a charity or something.
Hmm.
Maybe do something like that. Maybe if we had an all-star game. I would not say no right now. I mean, I would love to do an indoor game again. Before I end this broadcasting career. Because that's really, like I said, that's where I cut my teeth. That's where I learned the most about the game, the relationships that I had with players, coaches, referees, and fans, because we were accessible as broadcasters as well. We did the clinics, we went with players on appearances, we did all the talk shows. And it was big back then. It was very
Yeah.
big. At one point in Pittsburgh, we were outdrawing the Penguins. And then the next year they signed
Right.
Mario Lemieux, and that was the end of that. But
And it
but
was
for a while, we outdrew the Penguins. We were a big deal in Pittsburgh. So in St. Louis, they used to sell out the old
yes.
Checker Dome, St. Louis
Yep.
Arena. They sold out
Yep.
18,000. Couldn't get
Yep.
a ticket,
Yep.
couldn't get a ticket. And now that's what we're seeing now in St. Louis with the outdoor soccer with St. Louis City in
Right.
Major League Soccer. Can't get a ticket. You can, but it's from
Right.
somebody that's selling their tickets because they're sold out. So
Well, JP, a couple of the markets last season, a couple of the markets did really well. I mean, Kansas City had great attendance. Utica City had pretty good attendance. So if the powers that are doing the scheduling right now, because I know that this is being worked on pretty much as we speak, are listening to this, let me throw this out there. So schedule the very first game of the season in one of the venues where we know we're going to have a sellout group for the opening game, or very close to it, a good strong crowd, and put JP Dellacamera to do the play-by-play for the opening game of the season.
never say never, Greg. Never say never. Never say never. I loved the indoor game. So, it's not a goal of mine, to end up doing an indoor game again, but I would like to do it at some point.
Yeah.
However it works out. It's a lot of work if you're just doing one game. It's nicer if it's like a 10 game package or a 20 game package or something like that. But
Right.
you never know. But I just enjoyed calling the game. I'd really have to study the rules a little bit because we've got so many rules now that I don't remember in the old
Mm-hmm.
MISL. I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember some of the stuff that I see that we do now. If we had it back then, I don't recall it. I thought our penalties back then were similar to hockey. If somebody was holding, it was 2 minutes. If it was tripping,
Right.
it was 2 minutes. And now I see, different colored cards, and I don't remember that from the old
Yeah.
days.
So yeah, and I think I don't remember. I think the MISL. I know it wasn't that long ago, but I think when you were calling the games indoors, there was also that 6 foul rule, where if a team got 6 fouls, they got a blue card.
Yeah,
I
I
think that
don't remember
existed
if it
back
was.
in the old MISL.
Yeah, I don't remember if they gave a card or if it was just a minor penalty. I forget how that worked. But they tinkered with the rules a little bit. I just think the simpler the rules for me, the better, and the better for fans. I don't think you should have to differentiate between colors of cards and things of that nature. But that's just me. I'd rather keep it simple.
Right. So I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure I made an announcement, everybody, earlier, that when I put these comments up on the screen, if it says Facebook user, you're probably watching on MASL Off the Wall. This is a triple simulcast on Study on Soccer Facebook and Study on Soccer YouTube. And if you watch this one or any in the future on either of those two formats, when I put the comment up on the screen, your name will be in the comments. I'm pretty sure that a doctor in the house is referring to Jonathan Reimer from Empire Strikers. I'm pretty sure that's who that is.
That would be my
But
guess also.
at any rate, hey,
Yes.
listen, JP, this is how. Yeah. JP, thank you for joining me today. This has been an outstanding conversation, and you've been great. You said you were rambling on earlier, and not a bit. Yeah, here we go. Here he is, right here.
It is.
So I moved over to YouTube.
Hello, doctor.
But yeah. So yeah, and never at all. I mean, what you called rambling is just exactly what everybody wants to hear from you, and the conversation and discussion, the history, and how we have going forward. There's always skeptics. There's always people that, armchair goalies, that think they know better than the next guy. And obviously in a position at the top, people are going to take criticism. There's going to be criticism back and forth. But I got to say, from my standpoint, sitting here, not only you, Shep, and Keith, and being at the top of this sport, this league, I should say, and what you guys have going on is exciting from where I'm sitting. And I'm also equally excited about the new board that was just recently mentioned and named, which is also exciting. Great leadership there. You said we don't have a Mark Cuban, and we don't. But the owners that we do have are committed to this sport, and it's a really great group of leaders that are committed to moving this game forward, and working together to make that happen. And I'm just really blessed to be a small part of that.
Yeah. Our owners love the game. They're committed to the game. In many ways they're more dedicated than the old owners of MISL, who, I think gave up maybe sooner than they should have. So no problems, with our ownership. We're just trying to strengthen it. And I think, if you can get others involved, right? Because the people that are frustrated want to see us make more progress, and really progress is bringing in, bigger names, right? Because names is what drives people, right? So if you bring in an NHL owner or an NBA owner or NFL, baseball, whatever it is, you're going to draw attention to everything else.
Right.
At the end of the day,
I mean,
we need the attention, because again, product on the field is fantastic. It's a great game. Our players, can't say enough about our players on the field. When I watch a game, I'm entertained. Totally entertained.
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I always have, every season I have at least one ticket to the San Diego Sockers that I offer every game out in public, to the public, as just a promotional ticket. Here's a free ticket, come to the game. Sit with me for part of the game. Let's watch the game together. One of the stipulations is I'd like it to be your first game. I'd love it for you to be somebody that hasn't ever seen the game before. Come and let me introduce you to this sport, because once you come in and sit down and watch this sport, you're gonna get, if you're a sports fan, you're gonna get hooked. And
our best comments on Twitch, Greg, going back to that, were from people that said, I didn't even know indoor soccer was played, or I never heard of this league, or this game is fantastic, never saw it before. If you see this game for the first time, I don't think there's any way that you can say, nah, not coming back. I don't like it. Wasn't that good. Wasn't that entertaining. You know, I don't think so. You know, and our league is competitive. So even though, you know, Dallas had a very bad year on the field, there were many games that they were in that they were very competitive and hard fought, but they couldn't close it out and they lost. But on any given night, a lot of our teams could beat any other team on a given night.
Oh, absolutely. And even the top teams in the league, against the teams that have had recent years struggling. You know, if you're going to put Chihuahua or San Diego against St. Louis or Dallas, you don't know that San Diego and Chihuahua are going to win that game.
You don't know
going in.
I think that's good. That's good. It's a plus for us to have some kind of parity and competitiveness. That's good for us.
Yeah, indeed. JP, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I really do appreciate your time.
Greg, anytime. My pleasure.
All right. Well, I look forward to meeting you in person, and continuing this chat anytime we can. I just want to throw out there really quickly a little bit of an advertisement. The King's Cup is going to be this Sunday in Ontario, actually in Upland, California. It's going to be all day long on September the 3rd from 7:30 in the morning until 10:30 at night. If you guys are in Southern California, please make an effort to be out there. Superstars from around the league and around the sport are going to be there, and you get a chance to interact with them in person because they're only playing one game at a time. So all of the other players are going to be there on site, so you get a good chance, talking about availability, to get to see these guys. Also, of course, the World Mini Football World Cup is coming up in October, late October. So there's all kinds of things going on. JP, thank you very much and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Greg.
We'll see you.